you all know already that Ms. Turner from the IMC and myself are going to debate against each other just round one, so you can see what the opening statement and what the beginning of an argument should look like, as well as what the rebuttal or the crossfire should look like. So your job while we are presenting is that you need to take Cornell-style notes similar to what we do. We're modeling for you how to do this, but you all need to do that as well. Remember, we split the class in half, so you all are doing exactly what I do, and you all are doing exactly what Ms. Turner does. When she's speaking, you can just listen, and then when she's writing, you'll write what she writes, or at least, kind of listen for my arguments and try to capture those. Same thing here. We are going to be taking notes first, because she's the pro and I'm the con. Pro always speaks first, and then you guys will be taking notes second, okay? Does anybody have questions before we start? Okay.
All right. So, public education in the U.S. is in a crisis. With graduation rates of 73%, the United States needs to find solutions to our educational crisis. Voucher programs, a program where parents who want to move their child from a public school to a private school of their choice, could help with this. Public schools assign households a specific school based on where the family lives, often limiting the choice of what schools a student can attend. Sometimes these schools are low-performing schools. This is problematic often in low-income areas where educational opportunities and resources are few. A parent should have the right to send their child to any school that they want to. The majority of parents from minority communities support voucher programs and choice programs in educating their children, especially in Milwaukee. According to the Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice, the top 2 reasons people support vouchers are access to schools, having better academics, and more freedom and flexibility for parents. Voucher programs give parents flexibility and choice over their children's schooling, allowing them the ability to find a K-12 classroom that best fits their child.
So we're going to switch. Remember, you do not start talking back and forth right away. You wait until after both sides have been able to present their opening statements and arguments. Oops, sorry. I'm not going to let you see my notes. All right, so now you all switch. You guys get to just hang out and listen now as well. And you guys are going to be taking notes. You can go off of Ms. Turner's model, or you can do your own. It's totally up to how you want to structure it. Public education in the United States is in a crisis, and voucher programs will only make the situation worse. This is because of inequality, 3 in particular: inequality of cost, inequality of religion, and inequality of opportunity. And because the disparity between what voucher schools look like on paper versus how they operate in reality is very different. For the opening statement argument, I will focus only on the argument of inequality, all 3 types of inequality. Argument 1, inequality of cost. Schools are already underfunded, and funding voucher programs will take needed money away from poorly performing schools in public schools, creating a downward spiral. The less money public schools have, the harder it will be to make needed improvements. Vouchers do little to help the poor. Vouchers rarely cover the entire cost of tuition or mandatory fees for private schools. Only families with money to cover the remaining cost can go to those schools. Essentially, then, vouchers are tax cuts for wealthy families. Vouchers do little to decrease education costs. Money needed for public schools goes to pay for vouchers. Funding for voucher programs comes directly from the funding that should go to public schools. In Milwaukee, the country's biggest voucher program, the city has had to raise property taxes several times to ensure adequate funding for our public schools. The second inequality is inequality of religion. The majority of eligible schools in the voucher program are religious schools, and that was a statistic of 76% according to American United, which then is a violation of separation of church and state, as federal money will be given to religious institutions. The third inequality is inequality of opportunity. Public schools are subject to accountability of students achieving, so like the state standardized tests, the ACT, etc. There is no such accountability requirement for private voucher schools. And so there's an inequality and a disparity created when students in voucher program schools are not held accountable and teachers are not held accountable and public school teachers and students are held accountable. It is not fair to give schools unequal funding but then hold them accountable for the same quality. Public funds should pay only for public schools that are open to all children and accountable to the people. Students with special needs, those who are learning English as a second language, are left behind in public schools when we have less money to provide those supports, and the private schools are not held to the same standards of providing services, and so they're left behind in the private schools as well. Studies in the District of Columbia, Milwaukee, and Cleveland, Ohio, show that voucher programs do not perform better in reading and math than students in public schools, and that source is again from American United.
Oh, it ran off? Sure. Yeah. So I just kept annotating here, and on my line, and then what you're going to see then when we have our opportunity, our 1 minute kind of preparedness for the crossfire, what you're going to see is I've organized my notes in bullets, and then how I'm going to counteract some of these discussions are going to be based on the way that I have my bullet points numbered here. So I have things that I've included in my notes that I didn't include in my opening statement here. Okay, and so that's how I'm going to go ahead and counter argument.
So for you all, a lot of you have your notes in your Google Docs already structured very similarly to how Ms. Turner and I do. You saw on hers, she had one main argument, that idea of crisis, and then all her bullet points were related to that. She had a bunch of facts all organized related to the idea that our schools are in crisis. And that's how I took my notes then. Whoops. Number one? Access to higher or better academics. That's just my shorthand. Okay, so that's the notes that I took on Ms. Turner's. She basically structured my exact same notes on hers. So I set up my opening statement, and then I had my one, inequality of money, and then you can't see it, but two, inequality of blah, blah, of religion, right? So she did the same thing. She said, okay, yes, I acknowledged the crisis in my opening statement, but then she said money, religion, accountability. It's the same exact structure. During the notes, the next stage of this is we get 1 minute prep to be able to prepare our rebuttal, our crossfire questions for each other. So now her task and my task are the same. We have to take our notes that we took on each other's and find holes in it. So I'm going to put mine up here. You guys don't necessarily need to write this at this point. I just kind of want you to watch and listen for when we start. Can somebody time us? Always gets to go first with questions. So Ms. Turner will ask me a question, I'll respond, I'll get to ask her a question, she'll respond, and we'll kind of go back and forth politely for the first little bit. And then if one of us runs out of questions, the other one can kind of go on however she wants. And this part is 3 minutes. Will you time us again? Okay.
So my first question is, the government should support children and not schools. If schools aren't providing good service, why should they receive money and parents not have the choice of where to send their children with the financial assistance and help from the federal government and the state government?
Schools are set up, and where students are supposed to go are set up across the country is based on property taxes, and parents have a right to choose where they live. So they should, if they feel that strongly about an issue with the school, they have the freedom and the choice to move, and I don't see why that's a problem.
So if a parent sends their student to private school, they in effect pay twice for their child's education because they also pay taxes for public schools that their children don't even attend. So in essence, they're paying their own way in addition to receiving some assistance from the government. So the children that are moving, those children that still stay in public schools, still receive the benefit of those children leaving.
I have a response to that, and then I will ask my first question. I said in my opening statement under inequality of cost that vouchers do little to decrease costs because in Milwaukee we have had to raise property taxes several times. So people in public schools are paying double as well because of the voucher program. That's my response. My first question for you is that you had said that the schools are based on where people live, and you said those are sometimes low performing. I was wondering how often and where are they low performing, and how is this related to voucher success? In other words, what is the correlation between a low performing public school versus a low performing voucher school, a high performing public school versus a high performing voucher school?
So in Milwaukee, according to the MacIver Institute, 27% of Wisconsin K-12 students exercised choice in the 2013-14 school year. So in terms of, I don't have the exact specifics of the number of failing schools, but in effect, Milwaukee had 19% of its students participate in voucher programs, and that is decreasing year over year. And to go back to your original question,
the correlation between that and school success.
Success. So absolutely. What is it, time? Okay. So, yeah, so we would have to go through and then, yeah. So.
Yeah, we would have to go through then in the round two, and hopefully my round two person would kind of I started laying some groundwork for that idea of, okay, so you're talking about how many people are in it, but what's the graduation rate? What's the success story or the non-success story, right? So my round two, they would try to take that. And Ms. Turner has also laid some good groundwork.
Sure. So, and then often, this is one way to debate. You're each of you going to have a partner working with you. So when I'm struggling for that statistic then of the graduation rate, I have it here, but I couldn't read my notes quick enough. My partner might highlight that and slide it over so that I could go and read it, okay? It may be a good strategy for you in debating to have those note cards of facts so that your partner then, as they're trying to do that counterpoint, can access that information a bit more quickly. So,
and that again is where a lot of you have color-coded notes at this point. You guys are doing a really good job in this class for the most part of staying organized with your notes. That organization is going to help you big time next week. Does anybody have questions for us or about how this is done or about your role, any of that stuff? Yes, that's what your partners, and that's what I was trying to say before was, as a group, you guys will know your strengths and weaknesses best. So if you need note cards or even on the Google Doc, if you guys need to kind of talk through how you're going to support each other, now is the time to do that, not the day of.
And lastly, I would just say facts are king, okay? So it's often hard to dispute hard, cold statistics, okay? And from good sources, right? So, and numbers can be twisted any way you want to represent them. So remember, so if I said, well, so if Mrs. Griffey said 79% of the schools are not considered failing, give me some examples. Well, then what might I do statistics-wise in order to say that? Well, 79% aren't failing, but 21% are. 21% might just be too many. What if my child was in that 21%? And you see, I don't have the statistic to necessarily back it, but what I've done is I've flipped the number, and then all of a sudden, then she's kind of like, arguing with parent choice. Okay, so do you see how you can do that? And if you don't have that number, you can, sometimes they work both ways, but you have to have those facts first.
Okay, other questions? All right, you want to vote?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.